On. Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals public review session for September 15, 2004. We'll begin with a special order calendar, decision items. Item number 1, 76550 BZ, 1430 Unionport Road, the Bronx.
Did we have any further discussion on this, or are we ready to proceed? Good. Next.
Yes. Okay. Item number 2, 42770 BZ, 3801 Beach Channel Drive, Queens.
Anything we need to discuss, or we're good? Okay. Next.
Item number 3, 6891 BZ, 22315 Union Turnpike, Queens.
Anything to discuss?
Okay. Item number 4, 8892 BZ, 3007 East Tremont Avenue, the Bronx.
We're good to go?
Yes. Good. Item number 5, 140-92 BZ, 3921 Crescent Street, Queens.
Anything? Good.
Item number 6, 16000 BZ, 24404 Francis Lewis Boulevard, Queens.
Anything else?
Item number 7, 25408 BZ, 1214 East 15th Street, Brooklyn.
Anything?
Okay. Continued hearing items. Item number 6, 76-12 BZ, 148 Norfolk Street, Brooklyn.
Last time we had asked the applicant to revise their plans to include landscaping and the mitigation measures concerning the flood regulations. And we also asked that they provide us with a survey showing the surrounding homes which were greater than 1.0. Do we have any comments about what was presented to us?
Well, we know in Manhattan Beach, there's many homes that were enlarged illegally, and there were also many homes with special permits, so I always prefer that they give us the data and tell us, you know, which ones had special permits and what the approved FAR was.
I would agree, just as a sort of a matter of form, just to tell us whether or not the FARs are sort of legal. Not only are they special permits, but, you know, are there COs on these properties? And the applicant did not give that to us.
And I think they have to give us some better argument in terms of why they need a 10% increase in FAR. And in their prior submittal, they were discussing how they have lost their cellar space and wanted to put some of that space in the attic. And that, you know, since I know that our FARs are usually in the vicinity of 1.0, that might be a better argument than using possibly illegal enlargements to justify that FAR.
Anything further?
This case?
Yes.
New cases, item number 9, 92157 BZ, 6602 New Utrecht Avenue, Brooklyn.
My comments are, or one question, there seems to be a typo in the facts and findings. It talks about the hours of operation. It seems to be indicating that the business only operates at night. So I do think that's be very unusual. It's kind of an interesting business model, but it's probably not correct. I would like some documentation that there has been no leakage of the underground storage tanks, and then the other is, in the statement of facts, there should be a statement about why gas station use is still appropriate in the neighborhood. So look around the neighborhood, look at adjoining uses, what's been the history of the gas station in the neighborhood, and whether it's appropriate to the current surroundings. Anybody else?
Yes, I have a question. I've been to the site and I've noticed that there are some cars parked on the street, on the sidewalk, in particular a pickup truck with a plow attachment, so I'm sure that probably has something to do with the business. And also the site is messy. There were boxes strewn about on the lot when I visited. That could be tidied up.
I also visited the site, and I agree that the site is not well maintained in terms of, you could use a paint job. There's a strip adjacent to the residential property that could be landscaped. And I also saw several cars on the sidewalk, and I question whether they have enough space to do car sales, because the site appears to be busy in terms of, a repair shop, so.
And I just had a further question about the landscaping. It appeared to me that there's a different building, maybe a new building that's now adjacent to the property, and it wasn't clear to me whether that building had provided the landscaping on the property or whether or not the service station or the repair station was responsible for that. And I'd like them to talk about it, because I think they're supposed to give us some landscaping on the property.
Oh, also, when they do straighten out the landscaping and where that's going to be, they really need to include that into the newest plans, because the newest proposed plans don't have any of the information regarding the landscaping, the dumpster placement, or the fencing that's actually there. So they need to include those details.
Item number 10, 22984BZ, 75-28 Queens Boulevard, Queens.
Anybody have any comments on this one?
I do.
Yep.
I've also been to this site, and the site definitely needs a lot of straightening out and renewal. The building is painted pale yellow, but it has patches painted throughout. I guess maybe it was attempts to cover up graffiti in different color yellow, so it really is looking very shabby. The fence is in very bad condition. It is bent in some places. It's peeled back like somebody would peel back a sardine can in others. There's barbed wire that is in various states of condition, really bad condition, as in broken, missing, up in place, and with the barbed wire framework bent inwards. If anything, I don't even think they need the barbed wire and probably should remove it, or at least explain to us why it would be absolutely necessary. I mean, this is a parking lot for Bally's Fitness, and I don't think they would be storing anything after hours, so I don't think there's a need to protect anything.
Anyone else?
I think they had some inconsistencies regarding the hours of operation. I just want to know if they comply with their previously approved hours.
There were also some changes made, interior changes, in terms of partitioning out the aerobics area, and they have not discussed that.
Okay, good. Item number 11, 17803BZ, 11402 Van Wyck Expressway, Queens.
With respect to this one, again, I'd like to see evidence that there has been no underground storage tank leakage, that it's been tested. Also, the statement of facts is very limited. It does not explain why the gas station is still an appropriate use in the neighborhood. And the statement of facts makes reference to a 530-block rezoning in the area, which will, and states that will not change the nature of the approval and the relationship of this use to that new district. Where was that rezoning? What was it? What's the relationship of it to the site? And why won't this use have an impact on that rezoning? Anybody else on this?
They have a lot of extra signage. They have banners, they have signs on the light posts, signs on the fence. That should all be removed.
Anyone else?
Appeals calendar, decision items, item number 12, 24512A, 515 East 5th Street, Manhattan.
We will be reopening this case tomorrow to discuss the MDL waivers. Do we have anything further to discuss at this point?
Just a question, do we talk about the MDL waiver request? Yes. So I have questions about the MDL waiver request. The first is whether there's discussion in the statement of facts that there will be additional sheetrock added to the walls on exit corridors and so on. Normally, the MDL requires also that there be additional deafening normally, but in this case, probably deafening is not what's being proposed, but additional fire retardants on the exit corridor and the ceiling between the first and the second floor. That should be done, and it should be discussed. Also, what about, there was no discussion about the fire separation between the 5th and the 6th floor? What is the fire rating between that existing building and the new structure above? There is apparently testimony from residents who said that the sprinkler system is not functioning. We need to hear what's going on with the sprinkler system, that it's been tested, that it is in operation. Of course, there's a very big issue about the building being occupied without a certificate of occupancy, and also that the Board of Standards previously ordered the owner to remove the penthouse floor, and that still hasn't been done. And what's going on with that, because it needs to be removed. Anybody else with this?
I would just echo your sentiment, especially about the penthouse. I think that the applicant needs to really show us why he has not proceeded with at least pursuing demolition of the penthouse. I don't see a reason why he can't do that, and I think that it would go a long way in showing us that he has good intentions and following through what we're discussing.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I found it quite troubling that the penthouse is actually still being offered for rent. I kind of find it as if it's almost a mockery of this board that we requested something a few years ago and it has not yet been put into place. So I'm disturbed, as are you.
And with respect to that, this definitely will affect our ability to make a determination, showing that the proper efforts will be made to modify the building to make it safe and to make it legal will be a prerequisite to grant on this application. Okay.
New cases, item number 13, 19-12A, 3830 28th Street, Queens.
Does anyone have any comments on this one?
I just had a question concerning their financial commitment letter. It appears that there's an extension to September 2014, but it doesn't show that they actually have an extension of the extension. So if their bank is giving them additional time and money in their term, then if they could tell us that would be great.
And if they could give us updated numbers on the cost, because the original budget was $3.699 million, and as of 2012, $3.250 was already expended. I'm sure the cost of the project has gone up because there still is quite a bit of work left to be done on the interior. If they could update us with those numbers, that would be helpful.
Commissioner Montaner? No. And I just have a question also about the status of the backflow preventer approval. There was an application made exactly a year ago, or a little over a year ago, and hasn't been any follow-up on what the condition of that application is. Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Item number 14, 6713A, 945 Zariga Avenue, the Bronx.
I'm going to recuse from this item.
This case is on remand from the court back to the BSA. We have been requested to add some additional language into our resolution. And I call upon counsel maybe to give us a little more explanation on what that actually means.
As you remember, the board voted in September to deny an application for the maintenance of a sign at 945 Reade Avenue. Subsequently, the sign company filed an Article 78 to try to overturn the board's decision. And in the course of that litigation, the sign company cited to a prior board approval in the 12th Avenue sign case and thought that it would be helpful if the board would distinguish the 12th Avenue case from the Zariga case. The court agreed with the sign company that that analysis might be useful. So the court supports the sign company's request that the board consider adding an analysis to its Zariga Avenue resolution, which includes a distinction between the Zariga Avenue case and the 12th Avenue case. We recommend including a very brief analysis, and as you know, the case is just being reopened now for the limited purpose of considering revising the prior resolution, and there won't be any testimony or any other submissions.
Thank you. Any comments on this? No.
No.
Thank you.
She's right there.
Zoning calendar, decision items, item number 15, 21412BZ, 2784 Coney Island Avenue, Brooklyn.
As you know, we've had a lot of discussion on this matter. Do we have anything further to say before we proceed with decision?
I'd like to just say that I had last session raised a question about the continuous use and the operator's knowledge of whether or not the car wash was continuously operating, because I felt that that would be a portion of the good faith reliance in that the owner had come to the situation with clean hands. And in the additional submissions, I had asked for some sort of proof of that continuous use. And what I received instead of that was basically a brief stating that the Board of Standards and Appeals did not have the authority to ask that type of question. So in the absence of that information, I'm not convinced.
I would just like to say that after there was a question regarding continuous use, the DOB issued a stop work order in May of 2011. After a review of evidence, they lifted the stop work order between the period of August 16th and August 25th of 2011, and I believe that that would be the only period that could possibly be grounds for good faith reliance, but it had negligible impact on the expenditures or on the work that had been completed. In fact, after the stop work order, I believe there was $5,000 spent out of a total of about $471,000. So I really don't think that is, enough of a basis for a case.
I have to agree with my fellow commissioners on both of their points. I don't believe that this applicant has made their case, and I'm not inclined to support it.
Item number 16, 20813BZ, 1601 Graves Neck Road, Brooklyn. Graves End Road.
Anything on this further? We can proceed with decision.
Item number 17, 26613BZ, 515 East 5th Street, Manhattan.
We will be deferring this decision. It will go along with the A case,
Yes.
travel with the A case. Great.
Item number 18, 29413BZ, 220 Lafayette Street, Manhattan.
Anything further?
Item number 19, 29813BZ, 1111 131st Street, Queens.
Anything on this case? Let's see, proceed.
Item number 20, 31513BZ, 415 427 Greenwich Street, Manhattan.
Anything on this case?
Okay. Item number 21, 40-14BZ, 1413 Fulton Street, Brooklyn.
Anything further?
Item number 22, 4714, 122 21 Merrick Boulevard, Queens.
Anything on this?
They provided the ADA compliant path
Yes.
to the seating area, so I'm very happy.
Good. It's a very interesting McDonald's. I think it's probably one of the better McDonald's we've seen. Okay, next.
Item number 23, 50-14, 825 Manhattan Avenue, Brooklyn.
Anything further on this? No? Okay.
Item number 24, 5214 BZ, 1339 East 28th Street, Brooklyn.
Anything further?
Okay. Continued hearing items. Item number 25, 5-14 BC, 1807 East 22nd Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, this one is another request for an expansion of an existing residential building. And it's kind of an unusual one this time, in that it is also, in addition to the usual expansions to allow around 1 FAR and side yard waivers, there's also a request that it includes a significant amount of excavation in the cellar, which includes a 20-foot deep, I don't know what, in the cellar underneath the rear yard. The applicant really has to explain, first of all, what that's for, and why, in light of also a request for the reduction in the rear yard to 20 feet, additional incursion in the rear yard is being requested, because what it will do effectively is eliminate the opportunity for the growth of any kind of plants in what is left of the interior green space. I don't understand why that's needed, and I'm concerned about the precedent that will set, because I know that then every applicant will come with this mysterious 20-foot deep, I don't know what. And then in terms of the context, again, there really does need to be drawings that clearly show the building in the context of the neighborhood, perspectives, photo montage, isometric drawings that show the building in the context, any of those things that show the adjoining properties. There needs to also be a study that does show that the impact of the rear yard, the 20-foot rear yard, will not negatively affect the neighbors. That should include photographs and be part of that photo montage study with the heights of the adjoining structures. I know that there are adjoining structures on the lot lines, but I'm sure that those are one-story garages, not effectively three-story garages, so that has an effect on the rear yard. That needs to be studied, and a good argument made for why a reduction on that open space should be permitted. In addition, there seems to be something going on between the section and the floor plan. The floor plan at the attic indicates that the area that's not to be occupied is occupied by a raised platform floor and what's labeled as a tray ceiling. I actually don't know what a tray ceiling is. However, the section neither shows a raised platform floor or a tray ceiling, so it shows the attic going all the way through and occupied. So that needs to be corrected. And I think, yes, any other comments on that?
Just to echo your concern about the rear yard, I had asked at the last hearing why the applicant was not conforming to the TPPN that the building department issued concerning the amount of additional space one can have below grade at the cellar level. And their answer was, well, we went and we asked GOB and they said that they would comply with whatever the BSA said, and I can understand that if we were going to grant that. But I would also think that that might be actually an additional waiver that they might be asking for. They're saying that it's an additional 500 and some odd 540 square feet that they would now add into their floor area calculation, which actually brings this building now up to 1.19 FAR. And I don't think that they have effectively given us any examples of that FAR in the surrounding area, and given us a good explanation as to why they would really need to have excavated the entire lot and have a cellar that is the entire length and width of their lot. It just does not seem like something that we have ever entertained, and clearly the building department has not entertained it and has seen fit to say that residential development does not warrant this. So I think they have more to do if they would like us to consider this.
So it's an addition that it may be premature to be even asking for this because there's been no denial from the Department of Buildings with respect to this specific request.
Correct.
So it's not ripe, essentially, to come before the board. Anything else?
No, I mean, I agree with what you had stated, and I just, was a little concerned about the depth of the excavation in the rear because it does come up against, there's garages in the rear lot line of the other buildings and the side lot lines, and I'm just concerned about destabilization of the other properties.
Yes.
And this cellar exceeds what is commonly accepted as accessory use. So I think they would have to tell us what that use is, and I'm not really inclined to approve anything over an FAR 1.0 just to enlarge a cellar.
Okay. Thanks.
New cases, item number 26, 81-12BZ, 980105 Metropolitan Avenue, Queens.
My only comments actually had to do with the amount of signage that there is on the site. There's just banners of every description all over the place. So the signs have to comply with the C13 zoning, and it has to demonstrate that it does comply. Anyone else?
I have a couple of questions. One of them has to do with the trash area, the trash enclosure in the rear of the lot. That enclosure is actually, that part of the lot abuts residential, and so I would love to have some information about, whether or not there are pickups regularly, at what time, because anything that's going on in the back is likely to disturb the residential neighbor. And also, if they can talk about the menu board and address the issues of the sound that would emanate from it, discuss whether or not there's any sound attenuation, and also discuss the distance from the menu board to that residential property that's behind it.
Anyone else?
Getting back to the signage, there is actually a sign at the entrance to the drive-in that's on a chain link fence, which actually obscures what cars are doing in the parking area. So it's actually, to me, a hazard. And there are some signs that are on the prior approved plans, which have a turnoff to exit onto Metropolitan Avenue. There's a stop sign at the exit of the drive-through, and there's also speed bumps, which are not installed.
Okay.
Next one. Item number 27, 17613BZ, 31 Bond Street, Manhattan.
Okay, with the biggest issue for me about this application has to do with the side of the proposed rear yard. At the moment, it's showing a 24-foot rear yard, which is being cut back from 18 feet. There's been no explanation at all about why the rear yard should not be a 30-foot rear yard. The applicant can see by research, and should research this, that the board has not approved applications that provide less than a 30-foot rear yard, except in very extreme situations. I don't know what the extreme situation in this case would be. There's another discussion about the building being vacant for a long time. The applicant should explain why the building was vacant for so long. And one of my questions is whether the vacancy, or let's say the disrepair that was caused by that vacancy, should be included in the analysis for as-of-right renovation costs, because that was something that was self-induced by the owner. And I think that's it. Commissioner Oppenheim?
Well, I understood their uniqueness argument in terms of the fact that this is it's got narrow and fairly small floor plates in comparison to other lots in an industrial area that actually have viable industrial uses on it. However, I did have a similar question to yours as to give us the reason why the property's been vacant since 2010 and tie it in with the CoStar report that you've also inserted, which leads me to believe that there may have been trouble marketing the property, but I'm not sure whether or not the people left willfully on their own. Were they forced out? Is this a situation where they wanted to warehouse this property and make it look as if they were trying to market it? You need to give us some more information so that we can get an idea of the history regarding this. And then I also have financial questions. Can I go on with that? Okay. The first one has to do with the site value. It seems to me that right now, the site value is based on the lot square footage, and then it's based on lot building sales, okay? And 4 of those comparables actually have ground floor retail, and of those 4, 3 of them actually have a C of O that allows retail. And so it seems to me that a building that has legal retail on the first floor would be worth more than buildings that don't have retail on the first floor, and yet there doesn't seem to be any adjustments to these comparables to show that, because this site can't have retail on the first floor. So I think that the site value might be a little inflated and could use some adjustment or some explanation. As for the office leases at $42 a square foot, you have a CoStar report that shows that this property was requesting $55 a square foot, and yet that's not being used. So we need to have some sort of reason as to why you're not using what CoStar actually thinks would be an appropriate rent for this site. You have retail leases because you have retail as part of the as-of-right office, and there shouldn't be any retail on the first floor, so that should be taken out of the office scenario in total. And also, your overall return for your residential is approaching 10% at $3.3 million. And so that begs the question as to why do you need to recapture the space that you're taking out of the rear when you're cutting down? This building is 5.4 FAR, which is actually over the amount of FAR that's allowed. The max FAR is 5.0. And so if you're going to take this space out and you're also asking for a use change, I don't think it's necessary to also ask for extra bulk. And so I think we really need to see a scenario where we cut down that building and don't ask for the extra FAR, so just leave it at a 5 FAR building and see if that works, because it may actually have a return that's actually acceptable. And then also, we could then consider the situation as to what would happen if we provided more of a cutback in terms of the 30-foot rear yard that you were requesting.
Right.
I just had a couple of questions. This used to be a hat factory, and I'm wondering if they're going to be doing a phase 2 for mercury poisoning in the building, which would be a big indication of issues. Also, they're redistributing some of their floor area so that they can get a penthouse, some penthouse floor area, and I'm wondering if they can give us information as to whether or not they're complying with MDL, because I guess once they have a 6th and a penthouse triggers some additional safeguards within the building. And I think we had sort of discussed this before, but does this project require a C of A? And have they gotten it?
I don't know whether they've gotten one, but I know it requires a
It
C of A.
requires, right?
And some of the changes that we're looking at will require that they go back to landmarks. So,
Exactly.
I have some questions.
okay.
Okay, regarding the uniqueness study, I wanted them to clarify to me whether the lots they looked at were all in the M15B. Because if they're looking at other zoning districts outside of that area, I don't think the comparison is meaningful. And then in the uniqueness study, they didn't use the joint live work units above the floor area. They said they didn't include them because of the demonstration of secondary materials, because I think they're thinking that they're being sold or rented for non-compliant purposes, but I think that's a subjective analysis. And if the C of O says it's a joint live work order for artists, I think that should be part of the, complying uses. They have this subcellar that they're constructing at like $18 a square foot over the cost of the whole building. And they've added this cost, but I don't really see where they've added it in terms of where they've added it to project value, because it will have a swimming pool in the subcellar, which is a very nice amenity. I agree the rear yard is not adequate, especially since the site is rather deep. And I had a question about their existing floor area. It seemed to me that the area that they're going to be removing, that they're including in the floor area calcs, is actually a smokestack. And I was wondering whether it's appropriate to include that in the existing floor area calcs. And they also have light and air objections, but they really didn't address that. They didn't give us any information.
I just want to add to that. So there was a statement in the statement of facts that the multiple dwelling law doesn't apply to this building because it was renovated after 1961. The multiple dwelling law doesn't apply strictly to this building because it's in a manufacturing district, but the board does review the building in light of the MDL, and waivers from the MDL have to be specifically requested in terms of those issues. So that's where the rear yard comes in. That's where issues about adequate fire separation between new and old comes in. That's where lots and lots of other regulations come in. There really need to be good reasons why why the renovation of the building and the additions don't comply. And then with respect to the smokestack, obviously that needs to be looked at whether that's actually floor area, because you clearly can't count that as floor area if it's mechanical. And I just wanted, I'm not sure if you said this already, the as of right scenario shows use group 6 in the first floor. That's incorrect and needs to be corrected.
I
You
did
say that? Okay. Anyone else?
Item number 28, 2514 BZ, 1601 Avenue J, Brooklyn.
Okay, so this application is kind of a complex one, and it relies very much on expert analysis of what's needed for the expansion of a school. So, and the application really doesn't explain with any expert support why the school needs to be enlarged in the way it does. So, for example, the description in the programmatic needs statement states that the following spaces are needed, but doesn't provide any expert analysis of how those needs are derived or the requisite sizes. These include in the cellar, storage, multipurpose, music rooms, nurse's office, girls' locker rooms, gym, art room, auditorium. In the first, a larger Beit Midrash, a new library, administrative offices, classrooms, etc. It just kind of goes on and on. Isn't there a school programmer involved in this application? And if so, if not, there needs to be one. And if there is, that person needs to provide an expert report. There's also no correlation at all between the proposal of an additional what amounts to 14,000 square feet to accommodate only what's described as 100 students, if it's not actually about the 100 students, but about there not being adequate space for the existing 700 because it's grown all over the years, then that needs to be better described in the statement. The statement in the statement of facts, the as of right does not describe at all what the school layout will be in the absence of the variance. The statement is just that wouldn't be adequate. What would the school have to forego without this variance? You have to be specific about each use. You also need a clearer explanation of why the as of right layout tied to the drawings is not adequate. It's not at all clear that the as of right from the drawings is not enough. I observed, because there's no direction at all on the drawings or in the statement, when I look at the as-of-right drawings, and I look at the existing, and I look at the proposed, it's just a collection of boxes. And this many boxes looks just as good as that many boxes. So as far as the reader is concerned, the existing is fine. So you need to completely support what the difference is between all of these and why. One way that you can do that, and it makes it actually much easier for everyone, is if you, on the drawings, have notes that point to each of the areas and to each use and each room, and explain on the as-of-right what the deficiencies of those rooms are and how they are met in the proposed. That way it's a graphic explanation that also needs to be described in the statement of facts. It's not at all clear how the argument that the school needs more space is supported by the existing plans. Need to explain how many students are serviced in each room, etc. Doesn't explain why you could not scale back the requested reductions in the side and rear yard waivers. You could do that by consolidating some of the school uses, for example. Perhaps there's not a need to have a separate room for each thing. Maybe there's different class periods and so on. There's also no explanation of why a larger Beit Midrash room is necessary. You need to provide details on why it's physically not possible for the existing space to accommodate those use. You need to explain how many people use it currently, on what basis by the hour, what's typical, what are the peak days, what's the maximum capacity of the room. And with respect to it's actually a lot of comments. With respect to the plans, the July 2014 revised existing and proposed plans did not include the originally filed floor plans. These need to be resubmitted with a complete set of plans for each scenario. What happens when you don't submit the entire set again is what was submitted earlier actually kind of gets lost in the history of the file. Everything always needs to be submitted as a complete package. The conforming and the proposed floor plans do not include capacity or occupancy figures for the different rooms or key spaces. Also make sure that there are interior dimensions for all of the rooms, spaces, etc. on the existing conforming and proposed plans, and the to be submitted lesser variance plans. Lesser variance plans include reducing the amount of incursion in the side yards. We need interior layouts submitted with the revised drawings, so we understand which is the most recent layout. The recent drawings, by the way, this is a general comment for a lot of applicants, but in particular this one, PDF submissions are made. The drawings must be legible, so the applicant has to check the drawings before they send them to the BSA that you can actually read them. These drawings were largely sort of line weight shadows, hardly anything to look at. On the proposed plans, the area, you need to show on the proposed plans the area of non-compliance. Again, the elevations are illegible, so it's impossible to see what the non-compliances there are. There should be a rendered axonometric or perspective of the proposal showing materials and the intended appearance of the building. This is a large building. It's going to have an impact on the neighborhood. We want to see what it looks like. Why can't the floor area be moved around to distribute more of it in the R5, which is underbuilt? That's not been made clear at all, that why there just can't be more floor area moved to the side that is underbuilt. And then also submit plans for the lesser variance scenario and discuss in your response letter and the revised statement of facts why this scenario is not possible. Anybody else on that? I know I hit some of your comments, but
I think you hit most of my comments. I think that I would like to see some either graphically or even an explanation of how this building is going to impact the adjacent uses and the adjacent buildings. I don't think that there really was a decent section through the entire property showing what's happening on either side. And also not only the proposal, but what would the as of right look like in terms of the adjacent property so that we can compare and actually visually see the waivers that they're asking for. It's a little difficult only in plan. You really have to see either something three-dimensional or you have to see something in section to understand the complete project.
I agree with you, Chair. I think that you were very thorough in detailing exactly the deficiencies of this application. I think that with any programmatics need application, I think it's very clear to set a baseline and start from that. And the baseline is really the current space and what in the current space is deficient and why. And then you can build on that. You can talk about what is your optimal program, why you need different spaces or more spaces, and why what you have here can't be accommodated in a lesser variance. And I think that at the very outset, this project has to start from that point and then move forward.
I agree with everyone. I don't think they really gave us enough information, especially in terms of the interior layout, to analyze this properly.
And I just kind of want to make a general statement that in all of these applications where there is going to be clearly an impact on the neighborhood character, the building that's being proposed has to be shown in context. We need to be able to see what is it going to be like on the street? How will the side yard waivers affect the neighbors or the rear yard waivers affect the neighbors? That's a general comment that applies to all of the applications. The drawings can't just show the building in isolation. That's not adequate to fulfill the findings for neighborhood character and consistency and appropriateness with neighborhood character. Okay, thank you.
Next. Item number 29, 4214BZ, 783 Lexington Avenue, Manhattan.
Any comments on this one?
Just that, I think.
Go ahead, you go first.
Sorry?
You can go first. yes.
I think the statement says it's on the cellar, second and third floors, and the plans show it's on the first, second, and third floors.
Right, actually, the statement says many things. On page 1 of the statement, it says cellar first and second floor, but then it also says cellar second and third floor. It says 3,300 square feet on the first page, and then 2,310 square feet on the second page. So they need to go through that statement and make the corrections. But this site is actually open and in operation. So shouldn't it be filed as a legalization? That is my question. And then also, their statement that licensed masseurs certificates will be provided or when they are employed doesn't really hold water anymore, because now we know since it's operating, they are employed. So give us the certificates.
Right.
Oh, and I just had a quick question, and actually maybe Commissioner Otley-Brown could answer this. It appeared on the drawing that their sign is not actually flush with the face of the building. And so my question is that if it protrudes, does it comply with either awning or canopy, regulations? So if they could just describe for me whether or not it actually protrudes, and if it's protruding more than 12 inches, that would be helpful. It looks like it's sort of at an angle.
It looked to me when I was there as if it's like just a thick raised kind of sign.
Is it
Like a
illuminated or is it?
3D. I mean, I think it has the properties to be illuminated.
So perhaps they could discuss that, because they
Yeah.
actually just simply show it as a sign, sort of as a flat sign.
No, it
doesn't
definitely
appear
has,
that it's a
no,
flat
sign. It has
sign.
dimension to it. It's not a flat sign. The letters are, I guess, raised, I don't know how you call it, raised letters, but they're block letters.
So if they could just describe that.
More information on the sign.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Item number 30, 9114BZ, 3420 Bedford Avenue, Brooklyn.
So this is an extremely interesting, nice try on a 73-622 special permit. This is a proposal to merge four tax lots with 4 existing homes into a single tax lot, to tear down all three of the homes entirely, and all but 20 25% of the remaining home and use those 4 lots all together to create a 14,000 square foot house in this district that is typically represented by little houses in sort of like the 1,000 square foot range. And my reaction to this is mostly extremely interesting, nice try, but not at all the intent of this provision of the zoning resolution that is intended to permit the enlargement of small single-family homes that were built originally as bungalows and therefore not for full-time use, and to enable families to live year-round in what were formerly bungalow sites. So what this enormous house is doing is essentially, for lack of a better comparison, sort of turning this little neighborhood into the future Great Neck. The scale of the house is a decidedly Great Neck scale and not consistent at all with neighborhood character. And I'd be very interested to see how the applicant could prove that such a gigantic building, if it not being a school, not being a public facility of any kind, is consistent with neighborhood character, and what it would do to the neighborhood if such a thing were approved and then lots and lots and lots of neighbors decide to do the same thing. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a no-go. I'd like to hear other comments.
I would have to agree that I think that it's very much overreaching. I had concerns about how they actually calculated the amount of square footage that they say that is existing, that they have to sort of work with. It appears that there was either some illegal construction, there was a stop work order on the property concerning illegal construction, and I would like to have the explanation as to whether or not in their floor area calculation of existing floor area, they included any illegal construction, which they should not have. It also appears that the 2 homes had been conjoined, perhaps illegally. So I think that bears some explanation. But the size of the home, I think, is of great concern when it comes to character. And I don't believe that they've given us any sort of information as to the homes that are sort of beyond the floor area that they're asking for. They give us, a tax map and a radius diagram, but half of the homes that they mention aren't actually shown on the map. It's not clear as to exactly where those homes are and how they relate to the proposed home. I just found it very difficult to sort of look at this and analyze it effectively without any real information other than this is the size of the house that we're looking for. I don't understand why they would need, sort of side yard waivers if they're getting a 14,000 square foot home in the first place. So I think that if you're going to go that big, you really have to give us a detailed explanation as to why and how it fits into the neighborhood.
I agree. I think that this home is really large. I think that the open space ratio on this is very low at 57%, and I don't think there's anything in the immediate area that has that low an open space ratio, and that combined with the size of this home, I think it would be very difficult for you to make the character finding, because this is going to appear like a large institutional building in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Although this home is on a corner lot and the statement says that there was no need to provide what would be a side yard for the first 100 feet in depth of this home is so large and this lot is so large that there is no excuse not to have at least 20 feet as a buffer in that side rear lot line. There really just is no excuse. And when you think about it, the people who are in their backyards looking at this, I mean, this is going to be like a wall, like a monument. There's going to be no air moving around this. There's not going to be that much light. They really need to be more considerate of the neighbors around them in their construction.
Yeah, I was concerned about the distance to the home on Avenue M. I think the home on Avenue M is actually on the property line. And I also think there's some zoning regulation regarding the minimum distance between buildings which they're not complying with, and that they should justify the need for this 14,500 square foot home.
And I just want to add that the way that the applicant has interpreted this is adding up all the floor area of all the houses on the 4 lots and taking 25% of that, when it's clear that the intention of the zoning resolution was to have it be 25% of each existing house. It was not intended for full-scale demolition. It's intended for 75% demolition, and I just don't see how this applies, how this section of the zoning resolution applies to this proposal. Anybody else?
Item number 31, 9314BZ, 455 West 37th Street, Manhattan.
Any comments on this one?
Yeah, my only comment was, what's the purpose of having a boxing ring if there's no physical contact, if there's no sparring? Who are you boxing with in this boxing ring?
I agree, I thought about the same thing.
An emotional box?
I don't know.
But, I had a question about possible vibration, because it seems like they're suspending a whole bunch of boxing bags from the ceiling. So I was wondering, how are those mounted on the ceiling, and are they going to cause the floor above to vibrate?
I had the same question. Also, they're asking for 51, or saying that they're going to install 51 bags on the ceiling, but they say that their peak classes only have 30, so I'm wondering if there's 30 people in them. So I'm wondering if there's the ability to actually lessen the amount of bags they're going to be hanging. But they don't give us a real explanation as to what is really happening in the building in general, what is directly above it, what's adjacent to it. So it's difficult to kind of look at and see whether or not we have to ask them for some sort of mitigating circumstances. So,
and given that we're working on something where there is another gym that is really, really a nuisance to the residential neighbors above, we have to be very careful with something, in this case, if there's residential above this use, with loud music, if that's part of the program. Not really sure. I don't know that there's much in the way of music with boxing, but maybe this is what this gym does. Also, often there's a lot of, let's say, there's jumping, for instance, if there's kickboxing, that kind of stuff, then there's a lot of bouncing on the floor. There should be padding. So we need to hear from the applicant how this space will be isolated from its neighbors, both on the floor, the ceiling, and other kind of acoustical and vibration controls.
Okay. Final case, item number 32, 9614BZ, 290 Dyckman Street, Manhattan.
Okay. In terms of, most of my comments about this kind of had to do with the financial issues. Part of it was the as of right use is described as a community facility, but it's not clear at all in the comparables that were used what kind of community facility uses those were, because it seems to me that ambulatory care facilities, doctor's offices, would rent for more than, say, a ballet company or something like that. So that really needs to be made clear. I had a question, but Commissioner Otley-Brown will speak more to it, about there's sort of a disconnect in the statement of facts and findings and the financials. The statement of facts says that there are 29,281 square feet in the proposed floor area, whereas the financials say there's 21,745 square feet. I don't understand that disconnect, whereas the as of right area is 34,000 and a little more. There needs to be some better explanation for how all of those numbers are so divergent, why they're so divergent. Also, okay, sorry. the curb cut near the corner of Dykeman and Henshaw, there needs to be, the applicant said that normally you could go to DOB and ask DOB to waive it upon a showing that there's no effect on traffic, but that the applicant decided to come here instead because you're already coming here. We also need to know what the effect on traffic is. There's going to be, for a storage facility, I assume that there will be people lining up to try to pull into the loading dock, and there's no reservoir spaces. Based on the applicant's other facilities, we'd like to know what kind of wait time there is and what's going to be happening with those cars during that. That needs to be made much clearer, and actually an explanation of the process would be interesting. Where do people go? Do they go to the front office first? Do they drive into the loading dock? What about people who just come to look at their stuff and just make themselves feel better because they know they have stuff, or versus people who are taking it away and bringing more and so on, who obviously are driving into the loading dock. And then, okay, and that's, anybody else?
Well, I just didn't understand why they have an existing curb cut which is further away from the corner, and why they just didn't use all the amenity or the intake facilities. Why didn't they construct them on the other corner of the building and have a complying, a curb cut that was more than 50 feet away from the corner? I didn't see any reason why it had to be in the corner instead of further away.
Mm-hmm. No, I would tend to agree. I take Henshaw a lot, and I travel down that street probably at least 2 or 3 times a week. And depending on the time of day, it can take you a while to get down that street. It's sort of a shortcut from the West Side Highway going towards Dykeman. And I had concerns about how the arrangement, sort of the design of how they have their sort of loading area was actually going to work, because people they come to visit their stuff. They have either trucks or they have cars, and it takes them time to put stuff into their storage facility. So I could see where, especially having a curb cut so close to the corner, you could really have a big traffic problem. There's already a traffic problem, so I can't imagine that it's not going to be exacerbated by so many people just trying to get into one space.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Motley-Brown?
Oh, I have financial comments.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to start with the site value, which is done as land plus the depreciated building that's actually in poor condition. And I believe the remaining life on that building is 33%, yet the building is 87 years old. So I was wondering, does that calculation or assumption involve the fact that there's functional obsolescence? Has that already been factored into the remaining life of the building, or might it make the building even older with less remaining life if you were to consider it? Also, the land plus the depreciated building, the comparables that were used for that have buildings on them that are similar to this building that were then taken out of the equation. And so you have an assumption that starts the comparables, but then you have an assumed building value that you're then taking out of the equation just to add in a depreciated building, which is another assumption as to the actual remaining life on it. And I'm wondering if it might be more accurate to just base your site value on the land and building sales themselves without having to subtract out and then add in. I'm wondering if this has something to do with the fact that there's also R7-2 land on there and you're trying to value that differently. But then my pushback to that is this is not going to be used residentially, so why even bother pulling that out of the equation and valuing it separately? So that takes care of that one. In terms of the self-storage and the income and the space, I think this is what the chair had touched on before. The whole assumption of the self-storage income is based on a very high loss factor and or low efficiency. I believe that like 1/3 of the gross building area is actually not included in terms of assuming the income for this property. And that to me runs counter to my knowledge of self-storage facilities, which to me are you know, you have a small renting office where you go and you transact your business, and then you have a loading area that's not that large, but then you have lines and lines of rooms and little cubicles, and they're connected by one central hallway that isn't any larger than the type of hallway you would see in an office building. So I would like them to explain to me what the average loss factor is, give us some comparable self-storage facilities, since they do have Manhattan mini storage facilities all over, and show us what those loss factors are and why. In terms of the income and expenses, it seems like the maintenance and operating expenses for the self-storage are actually higher than that for a community facility, which also, to me, I'm not sure why, when basically, to me, a self-storage facility almost runs itself. You have minimal number of employees. I believe that you probably have minimal utility bills for that, because I don't believe that lights are on when those rooms are not being accessed by people. So if they can discuss why maintenance and operating costs are high as compared to the community facility, that would be helpful. And also, it seems that the taxes for the community facility are double the taxes for the self-storage, and if both of them are in tax class 4 and their actual market values are not that far apart, nor are their costs to construct, I don't understand why the tax bills would be that different. And then I have a question about the construction costs as to why is the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and electrical work so much more expensive in the self-storage building than the community facility? I believe it's like $935,000 versus $600,000. And that was in the McQuilkin cost. So if you could give me an explanation as to that as well.
And I just wanted to pick up on something that I'd actually like the applicant to help me understand. So the as of right community facility is described as being improved with only a basic stair, elevator, and kind of basic mechanical equipment and so on. So it's essentially analyzed as renting out a plain vanilla box to the community facility who's going to do the build out. That part I get. But then the proposed isn't looked at that way. The proposed instead is looked at as essentially operating the business, as opposed to installing a loading dock and office, basic mechanicals and the elevator and all that stuff. It seems as if, so the loss factor is taking into account the corridors and so on inside the storage facility. And so that just sounds to me that now we're looking at it as if we're a business operator, and I only get square footage costs for the storage spaces that I rent. I don't get income from the corridors. But according to that, then the community facility should be analyzed in the same way. They only actually use the spaces where the doctors are doing their thing, but not the spaces where the doctors aren't doing their thing. I don't see that this is an apples to apples comparison. I really need help understanding why the analysis is so different between the two uses. Okay. Thanks.
This concludes the September 15th public review session.
Thank you.